At first, there was no plugin version of the 1990s SPL Machinehead tape digital saturation processor. But then the Make Believe Studios Mixhead was released, which got quite hyped, and it even got a Tech Award nomination this year. My guess is that because of this release, SPL finally got the kick in the behind they needed to develop their own SPL Machinehead plugin. Now for both SPL Machinehead and MBS Mixhead I already did in-depth review videos. I suggest you check out those as well. The biggest and probably most important difference in authenticity is that the SPL plugin uses the original digital code, whereas Mixhead doesn't. That means that Make Believe Studios didn't have the original code for their Mixhead plugin, so they had to emulate. This will absolutely give differences, and that's fine as long as the sound is matching. So how similar or different are these two plugins actually? Let's find out after the sponsored segment of this video. If you need to split the revenue of your releases with multiple collaborators, DistroKid has splits. This enables you to, very simply, split the revenue you make. Add as many collaborators for a release you want and decide how much of the cake they get in percentages. On top of that, you can set recoupments as well, so if you agree on a fixed fee instead of royalties, this is the way to do that. Get 7% off of your first year with DistroKid by using the link in the description. Now let's start with the most obvious difference, which is the looks. I think that the Mixhead looks very dated in a wrong way, like 1990s or early 2000s GUI design. This is something you can expect from a first attempt design at a GUI, not from a plugin which costs $180. The SPL Machinehead, on the other hand, looks like a proper 2025 GUI. Very sleek and well designed, and it's on sale for $69 right now. The controls and functions are mostly the same, except that the Mixhead has an extra slower tape speed option and it can enable hard clipping plus oversampling, which was added after my initial review of the plugin. The SPL Machinehead has two variations of the original code, where Ultimate is a refined version of the original code. In this video we will only compare with the original setting. Also on the SPL you can type in values, which I found to be very handy with comparing these two plugins. In sound there are differences as well, and it starts with the saturation and harmonics. Machinehead has exactly one added third harmonic in default settings over the entire frequency spectrum. The Mixhead adds a ton of these. It's a very different harmonic and saturation amount. Now when you push both plugins, something interesting happens with the Machinehead. The low end has a lot of saturation, up until 300 Hz. After that it cleans up to that 1/3 harmonic. The Mixhead also has some of this behavior, only the cleaning up happens way higher up the frequency spectrum. You can hear the difference in harmonics as well. Let me show first with a 250 Hz tone. Listen to how the harmonics get added. I kept the settings the same with drive set to 14. Here's the SPL plugin. And here's Mixhead. Now when I add more to the input gain with a setting of 4, these differences get even bigger. On a mix, these differences are very minimal. Let me show with the Sermon Guinea settings, which actually changes the looks of the Mixhead GUI. Talk about creating a hype. The Machinehead sounds ever so slightly more open, and the Mixhead has a bit more aggressive upper midge, which you could hear on the sharp S, but it is very close on this mix. On this next mix, with all settings to 0, you get this. there's actually no audible difference, so let's do a null test. Now there is a difference because it doesn't null completely, but this sits around -60 decibels. That means in practice with these settings that it is pretty difficult to actually hear a difference. I had to add 0.0 of a decibel on the output of the Mixhead to even out the levels. The differences will be bigger when you push the plugins. With 6 decibels of drive boost, you can hear that, especially on the snare, the Machinehead starts to saturate and limit where the Mixhead is far less active. And when you measure it, you can see this as well. Pink is Machinehead, red is Mixhead. With the default settings and the drive on Machinehead set to 0 decibels, you can see that at the lowest frequencies that both plugins have a similar dynamic behavior. The Mixhead is ever so slightly compressing more. Now, the higher you get, up until 55,000 Hz, the Mixhead is compressing more and more. That said, it's still not much. After that, you see the Machinehead catching up and hitting a ceiling from 7.5 kHz and up. For the Mixhead, this starts around 11 kHz. Now, the biggest difference between the two in regards of saturation is how far you can push them. The SPL Machinehead loves to be pushed, and it gives this rather nice, musical crunchy distortion and a sort of pumping sound. The MBS Mixhead, on the other hand, is very different. It's a far sharper distortion, and if you push too far, you'll end up with the ugliest garbly mesh you'll have ever heard. The quality of the Machinehead saturation makes that you can use it nicely for parallel processing. I just wish that the Machinehead had a dry-wet mix dial for that. Overall, with moderate to slight push, both plugins sound quite similar. The Machinehead does use the original code, but most of all it has a uniqueness to it. In both the saturation and distortion behavior, and in sound as well with the high frequency push, which I prefer over the Mixhead. But as always, try them out for yourselves to find out which one you want to put in your audio tool shed.